I'm not your ATM, Vanessa. This has to stop. The confrontation erupted in our once peaceful living room. I, Jenna, stood defiantly before my mother-in-law, Vanessa, and my husband, Ethan. Vanessa lounged on the couch, her face a twisted mixture of surprise and contempt, while Ethan lingered awkwardly, his expression blank. This is my son's house, Jenna. I'll spend as I please. Vanessa snapped back, her voice cold and dismissive. It felt like a bad dream. Ethan and I had begun our journey together, filled with dreams and love, but those days were now just a distant echo. The man I had married, once so loving and understanding, had transformed into someone unrecognizable, parroting his mother's harsh words and ignoring my pleas. Ethan, you see this, right? You understand how wrong this is? I implored, turning to my husband, desperate for an ally. But Ethan just shrugged, his eyes void of the connection we once shared. Jenna, she's my mother. What do you expect me to do? He uttered, his voice empty of the affection that once comforted me. Realization washed over me like a cold shower. I was alone in this battle. To them, I was merely a means to an end, a dispensable part of their twisted family dynamic. I knew I had to break free. All right, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'll leave. And Ethan, we're done. I want a divorce. The room fell into a tense silence, the gravity of my words settling like dust. Ethan's face registered shock, a fleeting glimpse of the man I once fell in love with, but it quickly faded, replaced by an emotionless mask. Fine, Jenna, what you need to, but don't think you're walking away with anything, he responded, his tone icy. I walked to the door, each step lighter than the last, leaving behind the oppressive weight of this house. Vanessa's voice, laced with malice, trailed after me. Goodbye, Jenna. We'll be just fine without your drama. I didn't glance back. Exiting that house marked the end of a painful chapter and the beginning of an uncertain yet liberating journey. The cool evening breeze felt like freedom, washing over me with promises of a new beginning. I had no clear plan for what lay ahead, but I was certain of one thing. I would never allow myself to be diminished or disrespected again. This was the start of my story, on my own terms. Walking away from Ethan and Vanessa, my mind involuntarily drifted back to the beginnings of our story, contrasting sharply with the bitter end. I first met Ethan at work, where his charm and wit quickly captivated me. Our office romance blossomed into a deep connection, or so I thought. We shared dreams of a future together, dreams that now lay shattered at my feet. Our courtship was a whirlwind of affection and promises. Ethan often spoke of his difficult upbringing, raised solely by Vanessa after his father's departure. I saw a vulnerability in him that resonated with me, as I too had faced my share of hardships. But the Ethan I knew then was not the man I had just left behind. The first warning sign came the day I met Vanessa. Her demeanor was cold, her words sharp. Ethan could do better, she had said, scrutinizing me with a judgmental gaze. Ethan, instead of defending me, chuckled nervously and changed the subject. I brushed it off, attributing it to first meeting nerves. How wrong I was. Our wedding plans were modest, but Ethan's excitement was palpable. He wanted a big celebration, to make up for the lackluster moments of his childhood. I admired his desire to turn past pains into joyful memories. But as the wedding drew closer, our differences became more pronounced. I had risen to a managerial position at work, a fact that Ethan initially celebrated. But soon his support turned to envy. Conversations about my work achievements became strained, and Ethan's demeanor grew cold. He started suggesting I should leave my job to focus on our home life, echoing Vanessa's archaic views on marriage. Then came the ultimatum. You need to choose, Jenna, your career or our family, Ethan said one evening, his tone unyielding. But why can't I have both? Why does it have to be a choice? I responded, bewildered by his demand. Vanessa, who had increasingly become a permanent fixture in our home, chimed in. A woman's place is in the home, Jenna. You're neglecting your duties as a wife. Their words stung like a slap. I realized then that their vision of our future was vastly different from mine. They wanted a version of me that fit their narrow expectations, a version I could never be. The final straw was Ethan's announcement of Vanessa moving in with us permanently. A decision made without my consent, a blatant disregard for our partnership. I felt like a stranger in my own home, my opinions and feelings irrelevant. As these memories flooded back, anger and hurt surged within me. How could I have been so blind? How could I have ignored the glaring signs of Ethan's inability to stand up to Vanessa? I was nothing more than a means to an end for them, a convenient addition to their twisted family dynamic. But no more. The Jenna that walked away from that house was not the same one who entered it. I was stronger now, wiser, and fueled by a desire for retribution. Ethan and Vanessa would soon learn that their actions had consequences they could never have anticipated. I was determined to make them pay for every tear, every moment of self-doubt they had caused me. My journey of revenge had just begun. The days following my departure from Ethan and Vanessa's grip were a blur of emotions. As I navigated my newfound freedom, the memory of Vanessa moving into our home replayed in my mind, marking the beginning of my unraveling. It was a sunny afternoon when Ethan casually mentioned his mother would be staying with us for a while. The news caught me off guard, but I tried to remain understanding. Vanessa had always been a looming presence in our marriage, but living with her was a challenge I hadn't anticipated. From the day she arrived, Vanessa made it clear that she considered the house her domain. This place could use a woman's touch, and clearly, "You're not up to the task, Jenna," she remarked on her first day, eyeing the decor disdainfully. Her criticism wasn't limited to the house. She found fault in everything I did, from my cooking to the way I dressed. "Ethan, how do you tolerate such bland meals?" she would say, scrunching her nose at the dinners I prepared. Ethan, instead of defending me, would nod in agreement, his silence a dagger to my heart. Her extravagant spending was the most egregious. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and lavish parties became the norm. She used the money I earned as though it were hers by right. "A little luxury never hurt anyone, Jenna. You should try it sometime. Maybe then you'd understand," Vanessa sneered one evening, flaunting her new diamond necklace. I tried discussing this with Ethan, but he dismissed my concerns. "Mom's had a tough life, Jenna. She deserves to enjoy herself," he said, ignoring the financial strain her indulgences put on us. The situation reached a boiling point when Vanessa decided to renovate the kitchen without consulting me. "It's just so outdated, Jenna. We need a space more fitting for our lifestyle," she declared, as contractors roamed our home estimating costs. "But this is our home, not just yours. You can't just make these decisions without talking to us." I protested, my frustration boiling over. Vanessa laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed in the hollow space that used to be my sanctuary. "Oh, Jenna, when will you learn? This is my son's house, and what I say goes. You're just living here." Ethan's response, or lack thereof, shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. He stood by, a passive observer, as his mother bulldozed over my feelings and our shared life. That night, lying in bed, I realized the full extent of their betrayal. They didn't see me as a partner or even a person. I was just a convenient accessory in their lives, easily discarded and replaced. But I refused to be a victim any longer. As Vanessa's words echoed in my head, a plan began to form. They thought they could control me, use me for their own gain, but they were gravely mistaken. I would take back control, reclaim my life, and in doing so, I would ensure that Vanessa and Ethan felt the sting of their actions, a sting that would leave a lasting mark. My revenge would be meticulous, calculated, and, most importantly, deserved. They had underestimated me for the last time. The weeks that followed were a crescendo of tension and silent battles. Living under the same roof with Ethan and Vanessa, I felt like a stranger in a home that once held the promise of love and companionship. But the true tipping point came unexpectedly, on a day that should have been about celebration, my birthday. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to an empty house. There were no signs of celebration, not even a note. I tried to brush off the disappointment, reminding myself that expecting anything from Ethan and Vanessa was futile. The day dragged on with an eerie quietness until the evening when even Ethan and Vanessa returned, bubbling with excitement. "We have great news." "Jenna!" Ethan exclaimed as they barged in, ignoring my evident dejection. Vanessa's eyes sparkled with a malicious glee. "We're going on a trip, a week in the Bahamas. Just think of the sun, the beaches, the luxury." I stood there, dumbfounded. "You're going on a trip? On my birthday? You didn't even remember." Ethan waved off my shock. "Oh, is it today? Well, happy birthday then. But listen, this trip is going to be amazing. Mom and I have been planning it for weeks." Vanessa chimed in, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. Oh, Jenna, don't be so childish. Birthdays are just another day. Besides, you should be happy for us. We deserve this break. Their blatant disregard for me, on what should have been a special day, was the final straw. Anger bubbled inside me, a fiery blend of betrayal and hurt. You're using my money for this trip, aren't you? The money I work hard for. Ethan shrugged, a dismissive gesture that ignited my fury. Well, someone has to pay for it, and since you're the only one working. Vanessa laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Honestly, Jenna, you should be grateful. We're spending your money on something worthwhile. It's not like you have any better use for it. Their words hit me like a physical blow. The audacity to use my hard-earned money for their frivolous pleasures while disregarding my feelings was appalling. I realized then that I was nothing more than a financial resource to them, a means to fund their lavish desires. I can't believe this. You two are unbelievable, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. Calm down, Jenna. It's just money, and it's not like you're doing anything important with it, Ethan said, his tone patronizing. Vanessa smirked, adding insult to injury. Exactly. Be a good wife and support your husband and his mother. That's your role, after all. Their words echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of how little they valued me. But their smug faces, their condescending tones ignited something within me. A resolve, a burning desire for retribution. This is it. I'm done. I refuse to be your personal ATM, your doormat. You'll regret treating me this way, I vowed, my voice steady with newfound determination. Ethan and Vanessa exchanged amused glances, clearly underestimating the depth of my resolve. But I knew, at that moment, that my journey of revenge had truly begun. They had pushed me to my limits, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. In the days following my decision, I moved into a modest hotel, a temporary sanctuary as I plotted my next steps. The betrayal by Ethan and Vanessa had left a bitter taste, but it also fueled a fire within me, a desire to reclaim my life and exact revenge. I began by consulting a lawyer, meticulously laying out the years of financial exploitation and emotional abuse. The lawyer listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression a mix of disbelief and sympathy. We have a strong case here, Jenna. It's clear that you've been taken advantage of. Let's start with filing for divorce and freezing the joint accounts, he suggested. With each step, I felt a piece of my old self return, the Jenna who was confident, who wouldn't let anyone walk over her. I was no longer the woman who tolerated disrespect and manipulation. A few weeks into my hotel stay, my phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice laced with panic. Jenna, where are you? The bank accounts are frozen, and we can't access any funds. I couldn't help but smile, a cold, satisfying grin. Oh, Ethan, I'm taking back what's mine. You and your mother can't use me as your personal cash machine anymore. There was a pause, and then Ethan's voice grew desperate. Jenna, please, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. We're a family, after all. Family. The word echoed mockingly in my ears. No, Ethan, we were never a family. You chose your mother over your wife, and now you must face the consequences. As I ended the call, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was just the beginning. Vanessa and Ethan had underestimated me for far too long. They thought they could control and use me, but I was about to show them just how wrong they were. The next phase of my plan involved exposing their true characters. I reached out to mutual friends and colleagues, sharing my story. The reactions were a mix of shock and support. I always knew Vanessa was difficult, but I had no idea it was this bad, a former colleague said, her voice filled with indignation. Word spread, and soon Ethan and Vanessa's social standing began to crumble. Invitations dwindled, and their once bustling social life faltered. I watched from the sidelines, a bittersweet satisfaction in seeing them isolated, a taste of their own medicine. But the true revenge was yet to come. I had one last card to play, one that would ensure Ethan and Vanessa would never forget the price of their actions. The final move was a legal stroke of genius. Through my lawyer, I initiated a case to claim back the funds Vanessa had squandered. The evidence was overwhelming, and the law was on my side. The day we received the court's decision in my favor was the day I truly felt vindicated. Ethan's pleas for forgiveness and Vanessa's attempts to negotiate fell on deaf ears. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. The financial strain was just a start. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness and despair they had subjected me to. As I prepared to leave the hotel and start anew, I knew that the path ahead would be challenging. But I also knew that I was no longer the same woman who walked into this situation. I was stronger, wiser, and most importantly, free. The day of reckoning had arrived. After weeks of meticulous planning and legal maneuvering, I was ready to confront Ethan and Vanessa directly. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing the divorce and settlement. As I entered the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting there, a picture of anxiety. Vanessa's face, usually so composed, was etched with worry. Ethan looked up as I approached, his eyes searching for a sign of leniency. "Jenna, thank you for agreeing to meet," Ethan started, his voice unsteady. "Look, I know things got out of hand, but we're family. Can't we just put this behind us and start over?" I couldn't help but scoff at his audacity. "Start over? After everything you and your mother have done? You must be joking." Vanessa interjected, her tone a mix of desperation and cunning. "Jenna, dear, let's be reasonable. We all made mistakes, but we can work this out. We're willing to make amends." Their pleas were a stark contrast to their earlier arrogance. It was satisfying to see them squirm, to witness the shift in power. "Mistakes? You call years of manipulation and financial abuse a mistake?" I retorted, my voice firm. "You two have shown no remorse for your actions. Now, you will face the consequences." Ethan's face paled, a realization dawning on him. "Jenna, please, we need the money, the lifestyle, the reputation. We can't lose everything." Vanessa, ever the manipulator, tried a different approach. "Think about what's best for all of us, Jenna. We can still be a family. Isn't that worth more than revenge?" But their words fell on deaf ears. I had seen their true colors, and there was no going back. "This is no longer about money or reputation," I said, my resolve unwavering. "It's about justice. You will both pay for what you've done. The court has ruled in my favor, and you will comply with its decision." The look of defeat on their faces was the vindication I had sought for so long. I stood up, ready to leave the past behind. "This is where our paths diverge, Ethan and Vanessa. I hope the lessons you learn from this are profound and lasting. Goodbye." As I walked away, I didn't look back. I had turned the tables on them, reclaimed my dignity and independence. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. Ethan and Vanessa were now just a part of my past, a painful chapter that had come to a close. In the aftermath of my final encounter with Ethan and Vanessa, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The chapter of my life dominated by their deceit and manipulation was closed, but the journey ahead was mine to chart. The taste of victory was sweet, yet it bore the complexity of hard-earned lessons. I had moved into a new apartment, a space that was entirely my own. The walls were yet to be decorated, the rooms still echoed with the newness, but it was a sanctuary of peace and freedom. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. Word of Ethan and Vanessa's downfall spread quickly. Their once prestigious social circle had crumbled, leaving them isolated and disgraced. The lavish lifestyle they had so greedily pursued was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of their actions. But the true reward of my journey was not in their downfall. It was in the reclaiming of my identity and the rebuilding of my life. My career, which had once been a point of contention in our marriage, flourished. I was promoted, recognized for my resilience and dedication. Colleagues who had heard of my ordeal expressed admiration and support, further fueling my drive to succeed. I often found myself reflecting on the journey. The pain and betrayal had been real, but so was the strength I discovered within myself. I had faced my fears, stood up against injustice, and emerged victorious. The final twist of fate came unexpectedly one day. As I sipped coffee in a cafe, the same one where I had last seen Ethan and Vanessa, I overheard a conversation at the next table. It was about them. They were struggling, facing legal battles and financial ruin. Vanessa, once so proud and haughty, was now a shadow of her former self, humbled by the consequences of her greed and manipulation. As I listened, I felt no joy in their suffering. Instead, I felt a sense of closure. My revenge had been served, justice had been meted out, but I no longer dwelled in the past. They were a chapter closed, a lesson learned. I finished my coffee and stepped out into the sunlight, feeling its warmth on my face. The world around me seemed brighter, filled with possibilities. I had survived the storm and was now basking in the calm that followed. As I walked down the street, I realized that my story was not defined by Ethan and Vanessa, nor by the pain they had caused. My story was about resilience, about rising from the ashes and forging a path of my own. I smiled, embracing the future with open arms. The road ahead was mine to travel, filled with hope, opportunities, and the promise of new beginnings.